Hey everyone, thanks so much for jumping on today. We are going to dive right into it and talk about essential clinic website tips for 2023. What does it take to make your website an incredible tool for your business where you can drive new patients every day to your clinic? And let's dive right into it here. So, why does a website still matter for your clinic in 2023? Obviously, 10, 15 years ago, this technology was quite new on the scene, but maybe over that time, you've developed a couple websites along the way, even, and started to develop a bit of a fatigue around it. But the reality is that people are still accessing websites all the time whenever they need to acquire a new service. Maybe a friend recommended at a coffee shop that they try out a new physio or a new chiro. The first thing they're going to do is head to Google and either search directly for your clinic or search for a clinic in their area. And so the reality is that moment happens where we're still accessing websites all the time. How does that website convert? How does it actually drive someone to take those next steps to get to your clinic? We're going to cover that today and make sure we set your patients up for success when they're trying to find you. Here's a couple of pieces we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about storytelling, just the value of making sure we're super intentional with the content of our website so that people can actually follow the natural progression of steps from where they are having their problem today all the way through to actually booking that first appointment with you. We're going to talk about the value of the mobile experience, making sure you're taking care of someone who's visiting your website on a phone. So often we're editing our websites on a desktop computer, and so we're thinking about our website that way. The reality is so many people are accessing it from a phone. We're going to talk about online booking, just that crucial call to action moment, making sure that people can actually take the most important step when it comes to actually connecting and engaging with your clinic. We're going to talk a little bit about SEO optimization, such an important thing when it comes to making sure your clinic's showing at the top of Google, and some tips on how you can do that. And then also just the value of visual appeal, making sure that we take a few moments to think through the design of your website and why that matters so much when it's someone's first impression to encountering your clinic. So from there, let's dive into the first part. Let's talk about the use of storytelling. This is maybe one that feels a little bit on the peripheral, but at the end of the day is probably the most crucial thing. If you take one thing from our workshop here today, it's that I want you to understand the value of the content that you put on your website. I think so often we default to just kind of the standard informational content, your office hours, your location, your phone number. And of course, those things are all very important. But at the end of the day, you have an opportunity with the content of your website to really engage your customer where you first meet them where they're at, as opposed to just providing kind of that standard brochure level information of here's our services, here's our practitioners. All good things, but really they don't actually engage with the customer. So what I want to say here is most clinics need to audit the website of their content. How are you doing at connecting with the problem of your customer and carrying it all the way through? And there's actually a framework for this that we really like here at Clinic Sites, and it's actually something called the Story Brand, which was first adopted or written about by Donald Miller. Just a great book if you ever have a chance to read it. But it talks to this concept of really how you take someone through, and it's this age-old question of what is a story and why do we love going to the movies? Why do we love hearing when someone says once upon a time and starts telling a story? And it's because stories engage us in a way where we can easily follow along the narrative and we get to see that hero of the story eventually solve that problem and encounter success. And so that same moment can happen when it comes to your website. And the framework I want to walk you through quickly here when you're auditing your website, thinking through some of your content, is focusing your story on the visitor. I think so often we might, in our main headline of our website, say, a wonderful clinic, a beautiful clinic experience that's going to lead you to health. And some of these pieces, we talk about ourselves. We talk about why our clinic's so good. We talk about why our team is so good. And they very well may be, and that's fantastic. But what you first need to do is connect with the visitor. What's the problem or the pain that they're encountering, and how do we let them know that we are there for them? From there, we want to go through and identify and kind of break down that problem into what it is that we can do to begin to help them. How do we begin to maybe we talk about some examples of where that problem is affecting them in life, in physical health, in kind of sports, whatever it might be. But we want to let them know we can connect with them. And then we begin to create a clear plan of how we're going to solve that problem for them. Maybe that's where you can begin to introduce your team and their expertise. We're going to talk about when your office is open and available for them to come in and help, and how maybe some of the treatments that you might apply to them. And then the next one from there is giving them a very clear path to action, letting them know what the next steps they need to take are. I think so often, I mean, let's think about a standard kind of page for a practitioner where there's this about us, here's my education, here's what's important to me, and maybe that page just ends off on the footer of the website where there's location information and maybe a few menu items. How about actually letting them know what the next steps are in every opportunity we can to let them know how they can start to solve that problem. So you've read about it, you connected with it, but how do you actually do it? So we want to make sure there's really clear calls to action throughout our website. If you have online booking, that's an incredible one to jump to right there. So you've convinced them that you have the right treatment. Now let's let them book online with the right practitioner at a time that works well for them. And then also just ending your story with success. So making sure they understand what the outcome will be when they actually work with your clinic and come receive treatment. I think that's such an important part to them, seeing like, yes, I want that freedom from this physical pain or whatever it would be, or I want to begin to run a marathon again. And so making sure those success stories come out. One really practical example of this that we offer at clinic sites is just posting these 5-star Google reviews. So whenever someone leaves a review with your clinic, we'll automatically pull these right into your website. So making sure these are highlighted, letting them know that so many patients have come through and received treatment and are now healthy because of that. And so just a practical example of how you can do that. Second up, I want to talk through the mobile experience. And so this is just that nature that, again, we're seeing our website if you're at your office on a desktop, but the reality is that over 60% of your website traffic is coming from mobile devices. And so we need to not neglect that experience. I'm just going to slide this out of the way so we can read that. Not neglect this experience, to understand that this is the primary way people are engaging with your clinic website. And so as you go through it and scroll through it, making sure that everything's legible, everything you can read, everything well, the calls to action buttons are really clear. Maybe the buttons sometimes can end up too close together. And so with this, you actually either want to use a website platform that does this automatically for you, or you want to make sure that you're going through and editing these specific components. But we don't want to neglect this experience, because so often someone can just, if they get frustrated with it, if they can't click the button, if it doesn't work the way they want it to, they'll sometimes just click away and try another place where the website actually works. And so we want to avoid that experience to make sure that this goes well. I often have used the example that if someone were to walk through the doors of your clinic and there was a broom lying across the floor and they tripped on it, you'd see that was a bad experience for them. You'd go pick up the broom and move it out of the way. You don't get to have that experience with your website. You don't know when people are tripping through the experience and not able to complete it. And so it's up to you to take the time to go and make sure you're actually testing these things out for yourself, making sure, maybe sitting with someone and saying, hey, can you go try and book an appointment through our website on your phone? I just want to watch how it goes for you. And that's going to show you whether or not it's a positive or a negative experience. So next up from there is talking about online booking. And this is just that idea of making it so easy for people to book an appointment at your clinic. Obviously, the technology has come leaps and bounds in the last years in terms of making this possible, but I also think it's absolutely moved to an expectation of a patient that they can accomplish this. And so you want to make sure online booking is available to you. We love our integration with Jane. Jane does this so beautifully with making that just whole patient experience incredible from start to finish. And so a couple things about this is making sure that button's easily accessible, both within the top area of the website, but then also we talked earlier about those calls to action, making sure you're using an online scheduling tool that's quick and painless for the patient, making sure that it's just a great experience, because again, we want them to flow right through that where they're booking their appointment right away, and that at the end of the day, that experience being smooth is going to keep them coming back. You're going to have repeat patients easily able to book again. And so just to highlight this as an area you don't want to neglect, there's so much value in making sure that booking experience can really complete that website visit. Next up, I want to talk about the visual appeal. And this is just that idea that the experience of visually looking at your website is one of the many factors that comes into play when it comes to that experience being solid for your potential patients. We don't want them to be overwhelmed with too much text in any one area. We don't want them feeling like it was overwhelming or they couldn't really figure out the information. We want to make sure that everything just flows really well from there. And so I have a few tips here on how we can make that possible. One is to make sure your website's using white space. This is kind of a design principle that's universal in anything you design, but it also falls into the design of your website. And so part of this means making sure that there's lots of areas where there's nothing, like you actually have lots of padding between the edges of your website and where the text begins. If you have a title, making sure there's lots of space around that so that the title really jumps out at you. If we try to cram too many things into one spot, then it becomes way too much for the eye to really take in. And so just making sure as much as we can, leaving lots of white space. The other is a high quality use of photos and video. It's a small investment up front when you're setting up your website, or maybe you're doing a bit of an overhaul of your website, but just making sure that the pictures you're using are quality. We don't want to be necessarily grabbing just low lit photos on our iPhone, which is kind of an easy one to do. Maybe you're setting up, let's go run back and grab some photos. But at the end of the day, that's the experience, or that's the impression you're going to give to that website visitor is, okay, this seems like kind of a dull environment, or it's just doesn't kind of pop the way a professional photo is going to do that. And so maybe it's contracting a photographer to come in just for an hour or two, grab some shots of your team providing treatment, grab some really nice shots of the space. Maybe they're going to be able to bring some lighting to really make the space light up. But when we're deciding on a place to potentially go visit, we just want that experience to be amazing. We want that first impression to be like, yeah, I'd love to go there. It looks like a beautiful space to go visit. And good quality photos and video are going to help accomplish that. And the last one there is just large headlines and simplified text. And so one of the most common problems we see with poorly designed websites would be just a lack of proper hierarchy. And by that, I mean the text kind of maybe all flows into one. It's just all chunked together. It's hard to really pick anything out. Really big headlines help people scan your website, which is just the nature of how people read online, is they're typically scanning through the content of a website to find the area that they want to read. So making nice large headlines helps us understand what part of the section we want to read, and then we can dive deeper into that from there to begin to read maybe some of the body copy around that section we found. But even with that body copy, you got to simplify that too. You don't want any of these large paragraphs or multiple large paragraphs, because it often just fatigues the eye to think about doing that. You know, if they're really interested, they might kind of bookmark it, they might save that tab for later, but odds are they won't come back because that's just not how we read. So try to keep your paragraphs to really simple, like 3 to 4 sentences max. You can break it up with more headlines if you need to, if you have lots more, but also utilize learn more buttons. If you want to say, hey, I have so much more to say on this topic, drop a learn more button in there, take them over to a next section. And then if we have to really go into some deeper content, let's break that up with lots of subheadlines and lots of images to make it just flow a little bit nicer than, again, any of those large areas. So hopefully those tips are helpful. Again, when you're doing that website audit, just go through and make sure you're using some of those principles when it comes to the design of your site. From there, let's dive into SEO optimization. And so with this, the reality is people are searching for your clinic, whether they know it or not. They're searching for your specific discipline in your area. Are they finding you is the big question. What happens when they type those words into the search bar? Some are also searching specifically for your clinic. What happens when you type in the name? You want to do a little bit of an audit there to find out where you're ranking in these specific areas. Are you being found or not? A couple ideas I have here in terms of how you can optimize the content of your website is to really make sure you're focusing on your audience. So knowing exactly which neighborhoods or areas you're serving, and then specifically what kind of disciplines or treatments you're offering, will then allow you to populate your website with some of those keywords. If you don't say the words on your website, Google can't just know that that's exactly what you offer. And so you got to think through some of those terms. Again, maybe it's asking a friend or someone in your network, what would you type in if you were looking for my specific treatment? Because they're going to help give you those keywords that you're going to want to use. And so we want to make sure that we're loading those in. You want to have a website management system that's going to let you easily go and tweak those things. Maybe you want to add some more along the way, add a couple new paragraphs, make sure that that's possible within your website platform. And then organizing your keywords and titles to match your visitors' goals. What are they trying to accomplish? Maybe it's back pain for marathon runners. Maybe there's big runs in your area or something like that, where we can really target specific things. You can also set up unique pages. You don't want to fill one page on your website. Don't fill your homepage with every single possible search term and discipline and all those things. Maybe there's actually different pages you can build throughout your website to target specific areas, so that when that marathon runner hits your page, there's a specific page for how you help that specific area. And then also optimizing your content for local searches. This is going through and just, again, making sure that whatever your neighborhoods or cities are targeted within the content of your website to make sure we're showing up there. SEO is a massive topic. Obviously, so much more we can do. We don't have time for it on this specific workshop, but this is an area that our team is well experienced in and would love to help you with if we can. And so from there, let's talk about just 3 practical tips on what you can do with this information to enhance your clinic website to make it a powerful tool to grow your clinic. One is put a meeting in your calendar with your team. Take some of these concepts and review them with your team. Go through and just say, how are we doing here? Could we do better? I mean, just taking that time intentionally is an amazing opportunity. Sometimes we let our website just sit there for years and we don't actually realize the things we're communicating on there unless someone walks in the door and says, did you know your office hours are wrong, or those kinds of things. Just setting aside that time to audit it and make sure you're doing a good job can go a long way. The next is to take our 5-minute clinic website assessment. There's actually a link on this page below where you can take a quick assessment, go through, and we're going to help you with your content, your navigation, and your design to make sure that they're all doing what they're supposed to do. We ask some really simple questions, mostly just yes or no, and from there, we're actually going to give you even more teaching and tools on any specific area that the assessment determines you could use some extra help in. Hopefully that's a great resource to you. And then finally is take a 10-minute look at clinic sites. Everything I've talked about in here are pieces that clinic sites was built to help solve. If you've experienced any of these problems or feel like that your website's just not working well for you, or maybe some of these changes I've suggested today feel too challenging to even think about implementing, clinic sites would absolutely be here to help. Our team would love to help you. There's an on-demand demo you can watch right now, and also an opportunity to book a meeting with our team. We'd love to meet with you and just chat with you more to see whether or not this would be a good fit. But I just want to thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully this was helpful for you and there's some practical tips you can take from here. But have a great day.